Hello, everyone. I am here to talk to you about something very close and dear to our hearts. And first of all, I'm Carlos Rocha. I'm the CEO and founder of Dreams Incorporated and one of the co-founders of Sick Games. And I'm here to talk to you about a wonderful game published by Modus Games. First, I'm going to talk about Sick, which is a wonderful, merry band of pirates that we really enjoy making really weird and unique games. We started with the original prototype for this game that I'm about to talk, and are the current directors of the game. It's composed of Sebastián, Yadir, Carlos, and Camilo. I am Carlos, so one of them. It's me. And Dreams Incorporated, which is a wonderful company based here in Colombia, a studio composed of 30 people, and that it's doing everything we can to give you the best experience in the wonderful genre that is the RPGs. So this is the people that are making the wonderful game that hopefully a lot of you will enjoy. But we really hope that you can also learn from this conference about everything that we are trying to achieve with the game. This is a wonderful moment that we also want to share with you guys. It was one of the most important moments of our lives. This was taken at the PC Gaming Show live in Los Angeles during 2019 uh, E3. It's Electronic Entertainment Expo, and this is the moment when our game was revealed to the world. We were absolutely stunned by the reception of the audience. We were really, really happy that people were liking so much what we were creating, and that with just the trailer, people were excited to see what else we could come up with. So this was a really unique concept. We were really worried at the beginning that people would actually understand what we were creating, but we were pretty sure that the art style was something that people would like, would enjoy. So that was really great. And but the reception caught it by surprise. This was done during a few moments. We were global trending in Twitter. We were talked about by tons of people who were watching the PC gaming show. So you can actually watch the trailer still right now, and it is absolutely wonderful. It has more than 300,000 views on the Switch official YouTube channel. So we're thrilled to have that be so well received by everyone. We were also amazed that during that E3 we got a lot of very important awards given to us by a lot of different media outlets. So a lot of people that played nominated us for a lot of awards, and we won a bunch of those. And even before that, during 2018, when we were just showing the prototype, a lot of people were extremely happy with that initial prototype. So we won 8 awards. We were nominated for 8 awards, and we won 5 of them. We were really really excited about that incredible reception the game has gotten even since its conception. So it's not only that, but there were a lot of articles, not only from here, from the United States, where you're probably watching this, or from the UK, but also from Japan. Not only the West, but also the East. We were featured in Famitsu in IGN Japan. So we're extremely happy that people were receiving this so well, from Variety, from The Verge, from so many interesting and wonderful media outlets that were covering the game. They were doing articles. It was just not announcing the game, but they were also highlighting how original it was, how wonderful the art was, and we were just thrilled to see so many people being so receptive about what we had created. And this year, where we actually revealed another trailer with more information about the game, with a lot more to show you of what we have created, we saw in this wonderful magazine called Tactics, where they analyze a lot of the PR results and the presence in different media. We were in June we had the strongest PR presence with the game with Cris Tales. So we were really amazed by that. Also it seems a lot of people in Spain really like the game. We were featured in more than uh, we were featuring 18 front pages, and we were really happy to be also had a really nice coverage by lots of magazines, among them Game Informer, who was one of the first magazines that I ever read here in Colombia. So, I used to buy those magazines when I was little, and it was incredible that a game that a lot of us are working on right now was featured by this magazine. Not only that, but we have a wonderful set of art pieces made by the most amazing fans you could ever dream of. It's wonderful to have our Discord channel and see so many people constantly supporting the game, constantly talking about what they think the game is going to be about. I mean, there is some base, of course, because there's a demo already out there, but they're also super excited about what's to come, what characters we show, and everything that we slowly start showing the audience. So it's wonderful to see the art that they are creating constantly. This is just a little sample. There is so much out there, and we are so happy to see that people trying to emulate what we are doing. So, and this is where we actually get to the core of the presentation. I'm here to talk to you about this game, this incredible game that it's the most ambitious project that we've ever set our careers onto, and which is Cris Tales, an endemic fantasy from Colombia. You're probably wondering a little bit about the title, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So in Cris Tales, something really important is that we have a philosophy within the game, which is learn from the past, act in the present, and create your future. So this is how we think about the game from very different angles. So when we think about the art, we have to think about it from these three perspectives, from these three timelines that you can constantly see in real time at the same time on the screen. So it's a little bit complicated, I know, and it was also complicated to explain to the team at the beginning. The team didn't want to work on this game because it sounded very strange. But the original idea was to come up with a screen that could display past, present, and future at the same time. So you can actually see what the very first prototype looked like. That's what you see on top, and that was just very just simple doodles and some placeholder art from different games. Also, there was this perspective that made it look, I mean, it was 2D because that is our specialty, but it was in a 3D world. So that was really interesting to see how we could accomplish that. So by by having that initial concept, it was just a seed. We didn't know actually that it was going to be an RPG. We just wanted to create a unique type of gameplay and a unique type of art style. So we didn't think of any limitation right now. We just let the creativity flow. We just let to our imaginations tell us, okay, what can we do with all of this? And we tried different stuff, of course, but this initial prototype was the one that when we saw it, when we played it, when we enjoyed it, it was definitely an incredible moment for us when we said, okay, this is something special. And here you can actually see how it's shown in the game. This is how you play the game at most times when you see the crystals, as we call them, or just that division in the screen can differentiate the past, the present, and the future. So in the right you have the past, in the center you have the present, and to the right you have the future. That triangle, it's the base of the gameplay in the game. You can also see that in the combat, but we're gonna see that a little bit later. You can see how, for instance, there's a little puzzle that you can find here, and you can see how in the part down, close to the gate, there's a lock. So that lock is busted in the present, so you cannot actually open it. Even if you do have the key, there's since it's busted, you cannot use it. And in the future, it's gonna be even more rusted, so you won't be able to use it either. The interesting part of this is that the little frog that accompanies you, he's called Matthias, he can go into the past, use the key to open that lock, so that lock will be open in the past, and in the present, since it was opened in the past, it will be still open. So you can go through the gate and solve that little puzzle. But you can see that it not only affects those types of objects, but everything around you, right? And now we can see how we gave the next step, because this so far was a little puzzle and adventure game, which was interesting, but we really wanted to have a take on a genre that we really love, that we really enjoy. So we wanted to tackle a genre that we felt very close to our hearts, a very familiar genre. So we came up with this concept of splitting the screen in three in an RPG battle. So you remember that turn-based RPGs are basically you stay, your characters stay at a single spot, and you attack your enemies in usually another side of the screen. But we there's usually pincer attacks where they attack you from both sides. So we thought, what happens if you constantly are attacked by both sides, and you can send these enemies into the past or into the future with that same concept of the triangle. So we wanted to use that because the RPG, the turn-based RPG, is something that we really understand, that people also understand, but it's also allowed us for experimentation. It allowed us for that uniqueness that we were looking for. So in this case, we could tackle a market of both the nostalgic, that were thinking about the RPGs of old, and also the people that wanted innovation, that wanted something new from mechanics. So fortunately, a lot of RPGs have come out recently. So you can, even a few years ago with games like Bravely Default, but more recently with games like Octopath Traveler or with Persona 5, which have been so popular on the mainstream audience. We were very fortunate that the RPG it's very very on top of people's minds right now. Mm. And as I mentioned before, you can have these little puzzles in which you have to see the different timelines, and you have to see how you can actually tackle them to solve these puzzles. And not only that, but during the adventure itself, you could influentiate people by talking to them or by acting up. Remember, learn from the past, act in the present, create your future. By acting in the present, we can actually make decisions and talk to people to make them change their own futures. So you can tell people, hey, this would be, you shouldn't do this, you should clean up the lake. This is a very, very simple example of the very first prototype that we had. But in the beginning, we had this concept that was very easy to communicate. It was that in the future, the lake was polluted. So when you talk to the people in the present, they were kids and they were just throwing garbage at the river. So when you talk to them and convince them that that wasn't the best approach, in the future you could see that it completely changed the color of the lake. So a change in color was really easy to do. That's why we decided to come up with that idea, to actually make it clear for publishers and for other allies that we were showing the game, that initial prototype, what we could accomplish with the different decision system and the outcomes. And talking about systems, we have had to design a lot of systems for both the NPCs, the enemies, the different types of characters that you will find in the game. So it's all built around that central mechanic. Remember the triangle. Everything is about that triangle. So when you talk to NPCs, you can see an NPC that maybe in the present it's a woman that has a little baby, but in the past that same woman was didn't have that baby and was just a teenager. But in the future she might have the little kid has grown and she's pregnant with another baby. So that's a little story. Or you can see this woman who's an apothecary. You can actually see her in the demo. And in the past, she was a little girl who was learning from her grandpa. And in the future, she is this old lady. So you can see these three timelines in which we are actually telling a little story, which is really, really complicated if you think about it, because every character, we can't have the usual NPCs that you find in every other RPG, that it's basically a disposable character. No, we have to make every NPC matter. So every character has to tell this little story like it was a comic, like a very short comic that tells a little story. And it's even worse when we have to make it so that they can change that future. And it's a different story and a different system of design where we make the enemies, because the enemies cannot be just telling, they are not telling a story, a sort of a story. They have to have a concept, but that concept needs to differentiate itself from one timeline to the other. So in the past, that enemy could be a very fast attacker, could be like a very swift swordsman, but in the present it's a more experienced swordsman that attacks slower, but it's a lot stronger. So you have to be aware of those types of attacks. And in the future he might not have a sword at all. He might have become a wizard. So by becoming a wizard, he can actually hurt you in very different ways that the past and the present version of that same enemy could do to you. The same thing can happen with another enemy that could not just change the way they attack. It could be an enemy that was really big in the past, and in the present it's a little a little bit smaller, and in the future could be a little bit more small. So it's very, very small in the future, but what if in the future he can self-destruct? So by doing a kamikaze attack, you don't want an enemy in the future to be there, right? So you can send that enemy into the present or into the past, and it will be easier, and you won't get a chance of then self-destroying themselves and hurting you in the process. So it's not exactly about telling a story. I mean, they have to have a central concept like the slimes or like these bird-like knights, but they have to be different enough to work as three separate enemies. You can see other examples of enemies right here. You can see the goblins that are the first enemies that you find in the game. They are mostly fire based, and they have this metal armor, which is another system that we have created for the game, that if it gets wet, it has effects of a wet metal armor going through time. But you have also enemies that are based more on plants. So if an enemy it's plant based, you can see how that enemy could be more akin to be inflicted damage, easier damage by fire, right? Going back a little bit to the NPCs, you can see a lot of examples here of the wonderful NPCs that we have created. Something very, very important is that the apparel, the clothes that people are wearing here, it's not a random wardrobe that we have chosen for the characters. A lot of the colors, a lot of the design, a lot of everything that you can see here, it's actually based on real clothes that people wear in different parts of Colombia. So some of those are casual wardrobe that people wear every day, particularly in the towns of Nariño, Pasto. It's the south of the country. It's a little bit cold, so you can see how you can actually look for pictures of that, and you can relate to how that actually works. And other types of systems is that we not only have to tell that story in one particular type of scenario, but we can even leave that person completely out of one of the timelines, and that also tells you something. It could be something as they are not there, so they could have died. So that is something important that we also allow in this game, for it to tell a story without even telling a word exactly. Um, and with the enemies, as I told you before, you not only have the ability to see them in three timelines, but you can also send them from one timeline to the other. So in the combat, you appear at the beginning with just a blank screen that has no division of the triangle. But if you use the crystals, the power of the main protagonist, you can send those enemies into the past or into the future. So that is the structure of the three times that each enemy have. And we not only limit ourselves by how that basic structure works, but it should guide us. But for instance, here is a different type of enemy that has different futures and different pasts. So you can have an enemy that in one version of that enemy can turn into a little worm, and if you send that same cocoon into the future, could have been this really awesome and strong enemy. But same thing happens if you send that enemy in a different version of that same enemy, because you can differentiate the cocoon into the past, and it becomes this really strong worm that can eat you and actually take a party member out of the combat for a while. But if you send that version of that same enemy into the future, it could become this little butterfly, right? Here we have a lot of concept art that we created for the game. It's they were the original concept of how we imagined the type of enemy that we could create for this game. It's all about evolution. It's all about change through time that inspired us. Same thing happened with the characters. These are not exactly how the characters ended up. It's a little bit of a mix of both. But at the beginning, we thought of different timelines for the character, like different versions of time for them. But currently, we only have like one version of the characters during the whole experience. Um, but that didn't stop us from experimenting with different type of clothes for them, for different type of attacks, and most importantly, it allowed us for experimenting with ideas that we have for characters, because we really wanted something different. We really wanted something unique that could talk to the audience, but could also talk to us, what type of game we wanted to create, what type of game we wanted to show. And because we had a very particular premise with the art, and is that we wanted to do it frame by frame. We wanted the animation to be done in a very old school style, in a very traditional way. So we are doing that frame by frame. It's a little bit of a combination with some very little structure with bones, but it's mostly done adjusting every frame. So that takes a long time for artists. So we really have to think about what is it that we want to do, what we want to communicate with each enemy, with each character that we're creating. But those are not only the systems that we have created. We have also created systems for the status elements. So the status elements not only you only have the usual poison status element or the burn status element, but in Cris Tales we created this delta status element, and it's based on a lot of different variation that we have seen of these in other games. So for instance, Super Mario RPG, which is one of our greatest inspirations, you gradually lose HP with a poison, which is the usual one, but there was one other type of status element that we thought was absolutely wonderful, which was the mushroom. So with the mushroom, you couldn't do anything. You turn into a mushroom first. So graphically, it was very telling. But aside of that, of not doing anything, you gained health each turn. So each turn you couldn't do anything, but you regain health. And that is wonderful because that is part of how the Mario world works. That was something that we thought was brilliant, and there was even other type, very specific status elements that only worked for the mechanics that the game had. So we had, for instance, another game like Bravely Default that has status elements that prevent you from using the Brave or the default systems, which are intrinsical to the game. So it was a really strong limitation that we wanted to present to our players. Something that was unique to us. And it's only, let's take the powers that we give you, right? We wanted you to use them on the enemies as well. It's not only things that affect you, but things that you can inflict on enemies. So in this case, we have an enemy that has this really strong shield, right? So the Volcano Sisters have this really big shield that protects them from a lot of the harm. So if we get them wet by throwing a water spell, and remember they have a metal armor and a metal shield, if we send them into the future, that turns into rust, and with rust their defense weakens. So with that we have created the time tricks, and with time tricks, which are consequences of what happens when you use something and pass it through the passage of time, you get a different result that you couldn't just get from, oh, let's apply rust. No, it's something that only happens when you make it go through a delta of time. And that happens not only with the status elements, but that is the same inspiration for systems with the skills that each player has. So they have to have synergy. They have to interact with each other. So their mechanics have to interact with time as well. So for instance, one of the characters, it's an elemental mage that uses the usual fire, water, those type of spells. But this other character uses natural magic. So imagine that something that it's very common to think about is that if you leave a tree and plant it for a long time, that tree will grow. So that's why we came up with the idea of plants as an important mechanic for another one of the characters, of the playable characters, one of which is Wilhelm, which is the natural mage of your party. We can see him how he's actually using a Yukon Dragora, which is actually also based on a very special type of plant that we have here in Colombia that we eat similar to a potato. It's a sort of vegetable, and when we send that little Eucandra to the future, we can see how it grows, explodes, and creates a bigger effect that affects all of the enemies in that side of the screen. That is also a time trick, of course. But now we're going to touch on a very special subject that is very important for us to tell the world, and it is the endemic fantasy. So the endemic fantasy, it's not a particular subject that we touch within the game in an explicit way. It's something intrinsic that is being told through the story, through the characters, through the clothes, through everything that you see in the game. So you see buildings in the game that seem to come out of a fantasy world, but this same fantasy world was actually inspired by real places in Colombia. You can see there, for instance, the Lajas Cathedral, which is a very important cathedral for us here in Colombia, and that became the inspiration for the first cathedral in the game. But there are other cathedrals that are also used for inspiration for places in the game. But also there are cities, full cities, that are inspired by real places in Colombia. For instance, the city of St. Clarity, which we have already talked about in a video that you can check on YouTube on the Mogurus channel. The St. Clarity town, it's based around the coastal cities of Colombia. It's not just one, but based on different elements from all of those. So we We also inspire ourselves, as I mentioned before, on the wardrobe that the people are wearing, but also that little frog that accompanies you everywhere, Matthias. Matthias is actually based on a real frog that you can find here in Colombia, the golden frog, which is the second most poisonous frog in the world. So, he looks cute, but just don't lick it. You can see some of the design and how we thought about what sort of plans could complement this, how this would change in the future, because we also have to tell a message when we create this architecture. It's not only about, oh, let's create a beautiful place. No, how does the beautiful place change through the story in the game? Does it become more beautiful? Does it get destroyed after a battle? What happens to it? So we tell a story not only with the characters talking to you, but through what you see with the mechanic. Same thing happens with these other beautiful vistas, and every town has its own unique color, has its own unique art. So we try to differentiate very a lot where you are with the color scheme, with everything that you are creating, with everything that you are experiencing in the moment. But the concept of endemic fantasy, it's actually based around another very important, um, let's say, genre in Colombia. In the world, but basically very important for Colombians, which is the magical realism. So one of the biggest representatives of the magical realism in the world is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabo, as we call him, it's a writer who won the Nobel Prize. In his book 100 Years of Solitude, Gabo was trying to portray a real world that actually had a lot of magical elements, but these magical elements seem like they were an everyday thing, something that happened, in our everyday lives. So that's why we came up with this idea, because we wanted a fantasy world. We couldn't do the same thing that he was doing, at least not with this game. So we wanted to reverse it. So what we are doing, it's taking these normal elements, taking these usual and very everyday life concepts and turning them into a fantasy. We make them part of this fantasy world. Of course, it's not the first time this is being done. This is inspired by great games that have done something similar in the past. We just like to put a nice a nice tag to it, a nice way to call it. So the endemic fantasy, it's not only shown when we use Matthias, the little frog, in the game, but it's also used when we have the item called coffee that actually heals you from being stunned or from being asleep. So these are elements that not only permeate the aesthetics, but also the mechanics of how the world works in Cris Tales. Another thing that is really, really important for us is creating our future. So remember that was part of the philosophy of the game. But by doing that, we don't only mean that we want to create a future of us just making games forever. We want a lot of other people in the city, a lot of other people in Colombia creating games. So we also have been developing a lot of events that promote game development here in Colombia, and particularly in Bucaramanga, which is the city where we're from, where we are creating currently the game, and most of the team is located right now. So we do a lot of game jams. We have done jams that even during this pandemic, this global event that is happening, we created the Stay at Home Jam, which featured more than 300 people from Colombia and even from other parts of the world, creating these wonderful games around the concept of informal work. So there were these local themes that we wanted people to think about, that we wanted people to keep in mind while they were creating their own games. So we left enough time for them to think about them, to work on them. They had around a week to create this game, but everyone was working from home, but because we didn't want any issue with this thing about moving from one place to the next. This allowed for a ton of people to work on to participate in the jam, and there were more than 60 games out of this initiative. So we're really happy and really excited about the results of this, and we really want to continue doing these sort of events, this sort of participation from the people that want to create, of these aspiring developers or even seasoned developers that want to continue being inspired and continue creating these wonderful games. So we also want to highlight the innovation that they have. So sometimes we do contests of what games can portray a most innovative mechanic, which is what differentiated us in the moment. So we really want them to also be able to understand what is it that makes them special. So helping entrepreneurs achieve their own potential, it's also part of what we want to achieve. So this was a presentation. I really hope you liked it. I really hope you enjoyed what we had to show here. We're really excited to be bringing you this game to the world. You can reach us in different channels. You can reach us on Facebook, on our Discord. You can reach us on different media outlets. So please reach out. Please, if you enjoy this but have questions, but you have things that you want to discuss with us, please do so. The game is coming out soon, and if you want to try it out for yourself first, there is a demo currently on Steam, GOG, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. So we are really, really excited to be bringing you this game, and I really hope that this presentation was to your liking, and that you follow the current development of the game, and the release when the game finally reaches your hand. So again, thank you very much. I'm Carlos Rocha from Dreams Incorporated and SIG. It was wonderful to talk to all of you guys. Bye bye.